You had any good fruit this week?
The grapefruit's really good right now. No, all the good fruit's gone.
You know, I do feel I was just saying this to someone the other day. Like it, I love where we live, but if you could live where there is fresh tropical fruit, man, that'd be
Yeah. Where we lived in Mexico, there was no changes. I mean, it was just always the same. It was
Right.
always fresh and sweet and good. And, you know, whether those watermelons, whatever they were, mangoes.
Mangoes is the thing that if I could have a mango tree that produced fresh, oh man, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right. This has been Fruit Talk with Jason and
Fruit
Bruce.
Talk.
Yeah.
Come on.
But you are, you just got the tail end of Fruit Talk. Now we're starting our new podcast, On This Hill.
Yeah. Here we are on this hill.
Yeah, On This Hill.
Yeah. It's funny how many people I've met over the last few weeks. I get in a conversation or they're looking at my hat and they'll say, you know, I just had one just a few minutes right before we came in.
Yeah.
A lady in a store was picking up a table and what church? I passed this church. Oh, yeah, what church? Church in the Hill. Is that the one? Is that white cross on the freeway? That's the one on the hill. I'm grateful for the hill.
Is that where you start? Because when people ask me, where do you pastor, I'll tell them the name, and if that doesn't ring a bell, I'll say, do you know where Enchanted Forest is?
Yeah.
In fact, that's the only other landmark there.
Yeah, it's true.
And then most of them, if they're from around here, they're like, oh, yeah. Okay, we're the big cross right before you hit Enchanted Forest as you're leaving town.
When people ask me in a conversation like across the counter or something, I don't know, what do you do? And I always ask them the question, well, what do you think I do? That's often interesting.
I've never tried that. Oh, that's a good idea.
Are you in the circus?
Yeah.
Are you a lawyer?
Are you a circus freak? Is that what you are? You a dog-faced boy?
But it's interesting, just perception, what people are going to say, what they think. I enjoy that.
Well, we're in the Gospel of John. We're just really at the beginning of the Gospel of John, chapter 1. And this last Sunday, we talked about John the Baptist. So tried to hopefully clarify any confusion between the author, John, and the Baptist, John, because they're not the same guy.
Two Johns, two different
Johns. One
Popular
son of thunder,
name.
One...
the forerunner.
Yeah, 8 wild locusts and wore camel's hair. And
he would have fit right in the 60s.
Yeah.
We'd have loved him.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I called him the wild man in the wilderness, because he kind of was. People came out to see him. It was a spectacle.
Yeah, and he was definitely out of the ordinary too, right? In so many ways. He didn't fit the mold.
Yeah, and drew enough people that the religious leaders are like, okay, we're going to send people out here to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, they sent people to go ask that question. So that's what we kind of explored this Sunday, was them asking him the question, who are you? And then ultimately saying, well, what do you say about yourself?
Yeah.
Who do you say you are? And that's the big question we tried to unpack, is when you know who Jesus is, then you can know who you are and you can know what your purpose is. Because he said, for this purpose, I've come into the world. Yeah, one of the things I looked up when I was studying that I don't think we mentioned on Sunday was a few years back, remember Purpose Driven Life?
Yeah, that was a bestseller.
It was huge.
It's crazy.
I don't know. I looked up the details. Over 50 million copies sold.
Can you imagine?
50 million copies.
Yeah.
On the bestseller list over 80 weeks.
Huh. And that somehow touched a nerve, with people. Of course, that was... why am I drawing a blank on the author?
Yeah,
Saddleback. Rick Warren.
Rick Warren, yeah.
I remember reading it. I read it twice. I think we did a men's group around it, like a bunch of other people did. But I think what it did was, what I love about the gospel is he brought the gospel down to this is how it can apply in your life, the purpose-driven life.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I'm sure like everything else, there's criticism, but I think it was this, how does the gospel intersect?
Yeah, I think it's endured fairly pragmatic. Well for it to still be selling copies today. Yeah. And not to unpack it, because honestly, I read it a long time ago, but I don't really remember a whole lot from it, but it was a good book. But I think just the fact that 50 million people said, well, I want to know what my purpose is in life. Yeah. And so they must have had some sense of, I don't feel like I have a purpose.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm spending my life for the wrong purposes.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want answers to this question.
Isn't that interesting, though, how timeless the question, the existential question of what am I here for? What gives, or however you phrase the question, what gives me significance? Who am I? And again, I'm back to just loving the gospel. I did a week on apologetics, I think I mentioned, and just talked about that very thing, how we're wired certain ways by God, for God. And we're always going to be asking the questions whether we believe in him or not. The questions haunt us.
Right.
Where did I come from and why am I here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation recently too, and I think we've been open about this, but it does seem like there is a cultural moment right now happening where people are again asking that question. And I think there's a lot of factors that have made that happen, but one of them was that moment of Charlie Kirk's assassination. It got a lot of people's attention, and like so many things today, it divided a bunch of people as well. But no matter where you land on it, you had to talk about, like, hey, there was something that happened.
Yeah.
If that's evil and I'm celebrating it, then what's going on? Yeah. Or if that shocked me into, boy, I thought I disagreed with that guy, but if that's where that ends, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. Anyways, there seems to be a cultural moment right now where churches are seeing, we're talking to pastors around town, and churches are seeing greater attendance. But what's our responsibility to that? Like as pastors in the city, like how do you stay responsible to the Word of God and speak to the culture that's asking the questions right now? Like, well, what is the purpose of life?
Yeah.
What is right and wrong? What is good and evil?
Yeah, I was reading an article by a gospel writer, I think it was Trevin Wax, and he was talking about the shocking, watching an assassination and murder like that, but then seeing it over and over on social media. There was like this huge emotional slap in the face that was wrong, that was evil. But I think even for an unbeliever, once you say that, then you're almost forced to ask the question, well, why is it evil? And
right.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
Because if there is no God, then frankly, who is to say what's good and evil? But I think when you see it in that raw, traumatic, awful form, you're forced to step back and go, well, maybe there's a good, and where's that come from? And who decides what's good and who decides what's evil? Yeah. So I think that plays into the cultural moment big time. Big time.
Where do you start you just did, a week on apologetics with a group of people at Youth of the Mission. When you're talking to an unbeliever who's asking that question, maybe for the first time, it's not just academic, but something happened to make them, no, I actually really want to know the answers. I don't want to just argue about this.
Right.
I need to know what's right or wrong. Like where,
oh, man, isn't that interesting though? I just think should be a part of our apologetics, if you will, to a questioning culture. Yeah. Because I think, so what I mean by that is I think a non-believer, and rightly so, should ask us the question, well, how do you know there's a God? Or can you prove his existence? And of course, we can't prove it in the way they're using the word, but we can look at the evidence. We can look at goodness, we can look at beauty, we can look at design and so on. But I think that cuts both ways, because if you don't believe in God, I get that, but then I want you to prove why is something evil and where does that come from? If you can't say it's evil,
on what are you basing your morality if not something absolute?
If there's a law, there must be a lawgiver.
You have to back up to something absolute. So what do you say the absolute thing is? And if it's just matter, well, that's amoral. You can't get morality
as random as it gets.
You need personality behind a moral law.
We
watched an interesting video today, actually. We had Samuel Matias from Youth of the Mission. He's the director of the YWAM base here in Salem. Come and speak to us as a staff. Just gave him a few minutes before our staff meeting to talk. And he showed us a TikTok video, which is a very YWAM thing to do. I appreciate that. Come in and show us old guys a TikTok video. But it was a young woman saying, like, hey, this is where I'm at right now. Like I was walked away completely from the concept of God. The idea of him even as a creator. I don't know if she had any relationship before this or not, because she did say in the video, I've just bought my first Bible. So she must have, if she had any kind of relationship with God or church, it must have been relatively loose if she didn't even own a Bible. But she said, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, I can't prove to you that God exists, but after this event,
the Charlie Kirk event,
I can tell you that evil exists.
Isn't that interesting?
I'm convinced that evil exists, and so I'm leaning this way. I'm going towards God.
I'm going to start looking.
Because if there is evil, and I think I witnessed evil, and that felt that didn't feel impersonal. It felt like a personality, like there was a spirit
Attached,
there.
yeah.
And so I'm going to move towards the other side, the spirit of God. That's the direction I'm going. I'm paraphrasing, of course, what she said.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can get, again, she's the perfect example, that TikTok video of what I was just saying, that somehow I think God will use evil to exalt his name and to further his purposes. And I think what that young girl had was this revelation. Oh, that is unquestionably something from a dark place.
Yeah.
Call it evil, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
So if there's a dark place, there must be a light place. If there's a darkness, there's a light and a giver. And I think that's the beginning of a great journey.
Yeah.
Where you could come to, and I think, again, that's the Christian, because without the Christian story, what do you have? I'd love to hear your, if you totally reject the Christian story, well, tell me your story. How do you answer those questions, and how do you define evil and good? And
so that
what are the answers?
Brings us back to where we started. Purpose. Your story has to give you a purpose.
Yeah.
The story of whatever you choose to be the story of the universe. Like, oh, this is my overarching story. Well, you're a character in that story. So what are you here for? Yeah. And if your story fails to give you a purpose, then you'll just go towards some kind of pleasure.
Yeah.
What's
left?
If there is no purpose, because that's what we talked about between the Stoic and the Epicurean. The Stoic agreed there is some sort of a purpose. Right. There is some sort of a logos, a way to do life. But they didn't really believe that was personal. They believed that was impersonal force. So you just can't have a real relationship with an impersonal force. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And who's to determine what that logos is, right or wrong? Like your version of the logos and my version of the logos, the right or wrong might be different. But if you don't think there's a purpose in life, if you don't think there's a direction that the universe is going, then you're going to fall to, then I'm just going to try to either get the most comfort I can, or you're going to go to Shakespeare's soliloquy and say, hey, to be or not to be, to live or not to live. Yeah. That's the question. Right. Really, the ultimate question is, if there's no purpose in the universe and there is only pain, then to be or not to be. Yeah. Should I off myself or should I not off myself? I know it's a very dark place to go, but that's what Shakespeare realized many, many moons ago. Mm-hmm. And I think what we still grapple with, and that's why I firmly believe that there is not only a purpose to the universe, but there is a planner to the universe and a personality, and he is good. Yeah. Thankfully, he is good.
Yeah, and he brings meaning. You look at our North American culture where we live, and you look at the power and the force of materialism, and it just fits perfectly with a questioning, wandering culture. Because again, if there is no God, if there is no bigger story that my life is attached to that gives me meaning, like you said, I'm going to move towards pleasure. And so there's entire industries that are built around almost a religion, if you will, of just endless stuff and pleasure and experiences, whether that's, you see it all the time on social media. This is what I bought. This is where I'm traveling, what I visited. This is the award I got. But it's all that's left is the material world.
Yeah, there's that, and then also again, just because these two things line up really well right now, not because I just want to drive a conversation about Charlie Kirk, but culturally, that was the clash of, well, where do we get our identity from? Yeah. I mean, he talked about a lot of things, and I'm not here to be his biggest champion, although he had a genuine faith. I don't mind saying that at all. But he was in that forefront of, well, who gets to define or say who I am, and how dare you or the state tell me who I am or what my identity is? My identity is sacrosanct. You don't get to touch it. I get to decide what my identity is. Yeah. And what we are seeing in the Gospel of John is that John the Baptist found his identity not in what he decided his identity was going to be, but he found it, and he found his purpose and his identity by realizing who Jesus was. Mm-hmm. That helped him figure out everything else. Well, if Jesus is the Son of God, then I know who I am. Yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus, and for him in particular, I'm a voice in the wilderness pointing people to Jesus.
Pointing the way. And even in his darkest moments, in his darker moments, when he lands in prison, when he's alone, and of course, trying situations, he doubts, or at least he asks to reaffirm. He sends his disciples.
Yeah.
Hey, just go ask him. Are you the one? Are you? I just think that's such a kind of a poignant moment in the life of John the Baptist, where he ask them, "Are you the one?" Just tell me one more time.
Yeah, because I think we've seen.
I can suffer if I know you're the one.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But if you're not the one, this suffering is meaningless. Which I think that's interesting too.
Yeah. If I don't even remember who said this, and I hope I don't get it wrong. Said if your why is big enough, you can endure any what.
Yeah, yeah.
And his why was the ultimate why. Why am I doing this? Well, because I've found you to be the Son of God, the God of the universe. And so the what of living in the wilderness and pointing to you, baptizing people, speaking the truth to power, even when it means I get arrested, enduring prison, and of ultimately martyrdom. Yeah, I endured the what because I had a bigger why.
And hasn't that been the fuel over the centuries of every great missionary endeavor or every sacrificial kind of movement, whatever that looked like? Whereas I'm willing to even lose my life. I'm willing to suffer. I'm willing to be uncomfortable because my why is greater than my what. That's just powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it has to, I think, like I've said it before, I think we said it last podcast, part of the gospel has to be beautiful or attractive, because that's what you don't lay your life down for ugly facts or you do it for something beautiful, something that you've fallen in love with. And I think John the gospel writer and John the Baptist found something to love, not just a fact or okay, this seems to be the equation that runs things. But no, I've met someone who I love. I've met someone who would lay down their life for me, and their life is greater than mine. So I'll lay my life down for them.
There's a great, if I could plug a book, and I'm not selling it or anything, I'm reading it, but it's relatively new. It's called The Gospel After Christendom, and it's a book on cultural apologetics, which is kind of a little bit of a newer term. Apologetics has always been around, but I think the author, and it's not any one author, it's actually written. There's probably 12 essays by a variety of professors and gospel writers, and not gospel writers, pastors and so forth. But it just deals with this cultural moment kind of a thing. And he addresses a lot of this stuff, the beauty of the story that makes it attractive to something deep inside of us. Not just our emotions, but something even deeper that I'd suffer for it. I'd give my life for it.
Yeah, just go back to that piece of identity for just a second. The why, if the why is big enough, then the what, really all the others, the what and the how and the everything kind of fall into place. But also, identity and where we are culturally, not just between the one man and the left, but philosophically, there are philosophical camps trying to figure this out. But I think the gospel has always been really clear that you're going to try to find purpose and identity in something. You just are.
You're made for it.
Your work, your marriage, even if I can get this person to love me enough, or my status, like who are you? I'm the mayor of the town, or you do know who I am, you're showing well, this is my identity. And when you touch people's identity, man, I don't think there's any more sensitive topic than if you start to speak to their identity in a way that makes them uncomfortable or dethrones them. But again, I'm no philosopher, so don't let me fool you. But we went through I think a crisis when we decided God is dead. And Nietzsche, there's a lot more to that than the simple phrase God is dead. Because what he was saying was culturally we've moved past the concept of someone who is over us and that makes sense of everything. And that actually, if you read his writing, I think it kind of terrified him. He's like, I don't know what comes next if this is true. He's like, this is the only conclusion I can come to, but now what? If there is no absolutes. And so people came in behind him and said, well, now it's up to us to make meaning in life. I'm going to decide meaning. But the side effect of that we've kind of already discussed is that's up to everyone then. And what if my meaning and your meaning collide? And that's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in cultures where everyone's trying to no, my meaning is the better meaning. My story is the better story. And someone like, no, my story is the better story. But there's no longer an agreement on the story, and we suffer.
And what if
for
you
it.
can't find? I think the end of that is a certain form of nihilism, where if there is no meaning, then why should I continue to live? Why is life worth living? And I think the last 5 decades or so, or 6 decades, have borne that out. I think the rate of self-harm, the rate of suicide, the rate of addictions, and so forth. If there is no meaning, that's a dull, dark place to be.
Let me read you something, because I there's a term that's been around for quite a while now, but I've been thinking about it more as we were talking about the Gospel of John and digging into the truth of the gospel and how it is the better story. It is the good news. It is the good story. And the term is optimistic nihilism, which almost sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And it kind of is an oxymoron. If you're out there and you're an optimistic nihilist, I want to talk to you. I honestly want to talk to you. I'm not saying I want to correct you. I want to have a conversation with you. But optimistic nihilism is a philosophy where individuals accept that life has no inherent cosmic meaning. But instead of despair, they embrace this lack of meaning as a source of liberation.
I call that whistling in the dark.
Yeah, but if culture has taken God away from you, if the man in the white lab coat, who we consider the new prophet, walks out of his lab and says, "We've done all the calculations and there is no God," and your culture says that's the people that run us, that's the people that listen. We listen to the experts, listen to the science. Then we go, well, I guess there's no meaning in life. I either am going to fall into despair and say there is no meaning, or I'm going to say, well, maybe that means I'm free. I can do whatever I want. There's no meaning in life. But that freedom doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Orphans aren't happy.
Yeah. And the question's inescapable, because you think about, then where do I look for meaning? Where do I look for significance? Well, look around, and where do people find significance? Power somewhere, my intelligence, my good looks. I mean, not that that's the measure of all things, but you look at pop culture. Yeah, pop culture is, hey, who's looking good, who's not looking good so much anymore. The crisis of growing old, the hatred. I mean, the dread of growing old. I mean, it's freaky.
It's terrifying.
If that's your meaning, and if that's your significance, and it's unstoppable. The obsession, almost with youth, but remaining youthful and things like that.
Let me read a few of these points from optimistic nihilism. Key aspects: rejection of inherent meaning. So it acknowledges that the universe does not have any preordained plan or grand purpose for humanity. We are a cosmic accident. There's no reason why we're here. We're just here.
Random.
So liberation and freedom. So without a cosmic agenda, individuals are free to decide what's important to them. On the surface, if you don't think deeply about that, you're like, oh, okay, I get to decide. I don't have a boss. When the what's away, the what will play. When the
cat's away,
the cat's away, the mice will play. Right? I don't know how I lost that. Personal agency. The focus shifts to personal responsibility and the creation of subjective meaning through individual choices, passions, and connections. So I get it's subjective, and I decide through just my choice, this is just what I choose, or my passion. This is what I care the most about. Yeah. Passion, man. If we could just talk about passion for a while in our culture, and how much that idea that passion is the most important thing, which the early church, or you say the Catholic Church, used to talk about. Hey, your passions actually need to be tempered.
Right.
Those passions aren't, because you are a sinful person. You don't have holy passions. You can be born again, you can be transformed, and you can receive new passions. But the human passions are actually dangerous. And then an emphasis on enjoyment, which is where we were going. Since existence is finite and objectively insignificant in the grand scheme, individuals are free to pursue their own happiness and desires without the weight of societal expectations or the fear of failure. Now, my question would be to this, with emphasis on enjoyment, because I think, well, most of our people are listening to this and they're like, hey man, that's right, go on. But if you're not, and you're listening to this and you're like, so you guys are against enjoyment? You guys don't want that? You're arguing against my freedom to pursue happiness and desires without the weight of societal expectations or a fear of failure? Like, give me the argument against that, I would say try to run a society that way.
Right.
Just try to have any kind of, even the smallest possible unit of society of a family where there's just no head. Headship is gone.
Yeah.
Everyone does what they want. You're not a family, dude.
Yeah.
You're not a city. You're not a state. You're not a country. If everyone is just purely, and I know it's written into our founding documents, the pursuit of happiness, but that was written to a people who agreed there was a God.
Right. Yeah, they had a baseline,
Yeah.
so to speak, to work off of.
Yeah, I'm ranting.
No.
I feel it ranting.
It's. I think we're living in a moment that I think the gospel message is a wonderful opportunity for us, or there's a wonderful opportunity for the telling of the gospel story and the preaching and the teaching of the gospel story. And I think you and I, as pastors, I can't speak for everybody, but anecdotally, the pastors I've spoken to over the last 3 or 4 weeks, both here in our city and some outside, have said they're just like this girl on this TikTok video this morning we watched. There's like this shift that's happened, and we don't understand it all. We can't see the ramifications of an act like the murder of Charlie Kirk, but I think we feel it. I think there's this moment, and kind of like, I don't know who's listening remembers 9/11, but there was a cultural moment.
Yeah,
I remember 9/11 shots of New York City and crowds of people headed into the church at the noon hour, and people on CNN, well-known Christian figures talking about praying, and there was a cultural moment, and that passed. But I think there was some fruit out of that.
You didn't hear the word evil come out of people's mouths much at all before 9/11.
Yeah.
And then for a while after 9/11, there was this idea like, oh, this was an evil act.
Evil act.
Yeah. And so you as soon as you mention those words of good and evil, then you come to a conversation of God. Like, you're already at it. You got to talk about God now.
Yeah.
Where do these concepts come? That's what we're describing. But I could rant. Do you like a good rant?
It depends.
Some of my favorite comedians are really good ranters. They go off
script and they just run with it.
Louis Black. Have you ever heard of Louis Black?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He looks like he's going to have a stroke. Every time you watch him, he's just like shaking. I saw an interview with him where he wasn't in character. He was just being himself. And you're like, oh, I don't even recognize you.
Yeah.
Like you must have to walk away from that. And then, of course, I don't want to actually rant. But I think, because we kind of started this conversation, like, what is the church and the shepherds owe this moment? How do you pastor this moment? And I think we were having a conversation with our other pastors in our community of Church on the Hill about we've got to find connections, because there are people coming through our doors right now, and they can just come and go, and the moment can pass, or they can be pastored, they can be shepherded, and not just collected like they're a number, and like, how many people go to your church? Well, how many people go to your church? Who cares? How many sheep are under the care? The shepherd, can we love them? Can we connect them to Christ and to the body of Christ?
Yeah.
I think that's what the burden I'm feeling right now. Not in a heavy way, hopefully, but in an optimistic way of, if something good is happening, then we're positioned. We have the good story.
I was just thinking while you were talking how Jesus described the discovery of the truth of the gospel, or as the pearl of great price. And so if that's true, I mean, right now, our culture is moving towards, hey, gold just went over 4,000 an ounce, and maybe you should be buying silver, or maybe you should be buying Bitcoin. What are they looking for? They're looking for not just money for money's sake, or wealth for wealth's sake. They're looking for what it equates to, which is security. I want to have enough money to live my life the way I want to live it. But Jesus said, listen, the way you find security is by losing your life. And on the surface, that just sounds sounds wonky, right? But he said the kingdom of God is like a man who found this pearl and then went and sold everything he had to buy this pearl. You know, he sold everything he had to buy this land, this treasure found in the dirt. And I think that's the story. And I think that comes partially by human agency, like us sharing it, preaching it. But we're still the church. We're still flawed human beings. So it's easy to look at us and go, well, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in you guys or the church. But man, you don't want to miss the core of which is Jesus, the pearl of great price, the author of the story, the keeper of the story, the finisher of the story.
You know, we were talking before we started rolling, not just about fruit, but about John and how much we're enjoying just reading it right now and stuff, and how it really it ramps up the miracles. You know, we're still in chapter 1, and we'll get to the wedding feast soon, and we'll see a public miracle. But first, well, we're gonna have a guest speaker this Sunday, and then we're gonna look at his calling of the first disciples, and then we're gonna get to miracles, and then it's gonna be a whole lot of kind of power encounter after power encounter, like miracle after miracle.
Yeah.
Until it gets all the way to
throwing down his credentials.
Yeah, and trying to tie this all together, we also had a map. It's a program that we're running right now.
Leadership development, yeah.
Yeah, and just last night we had Jennifer Thatcher come and speak on the Holy Spirit, and I think I'm saying all that to say, this moment, if this isn't a time made for miracles and wonders, I don't know what is. To just be bold and pray for people's healing, to be bold and speak words of knowledge to people that are like, I don't know, I've got all these questions, what's going on? I think the Lord is saying to you, and, you know, because not just out of some optimism, but no, I have prayed, and I feel like the Holy Spirit has directed me to tell you what, you know, that word, that we call that
word of the
word
Lord,
of word of the Lord, word of knowledge, the prophetic. I think now is the time for the church to maybe dust off. I'm afraid to say dust off because that means we have neglected, but dust off some of the gifts of the Spirit and operate in them, because people want to know what power that, and not to just be drawn to the power, but hey, is this just a good story, or is there some authority behind this? Yeah. Is there some power behind this?
Isn't it interesting to think, as I was saying before we started here this afternoon, that I'd been just reading through the Gospel of John in just a quiet time. And you just think about the context that all those things took place. These were, you know, basically the Jewish world, the Middle East world, you know, 2,000 years ago, full of politics, full of treachery, full of good and evil. I mean, it was different, but it was the same, right?
Right.
And so in comes this Jesus creature, this Messiah figure, this character of Jesus. And he starts doing his first miracle in the Gospel of John is water into wine for the wedding feast, you know.
There it is.
Dozens and dozens of gallons, hundreds of gallons actually. Yeah. And there's you can imagine, just you used the word earlier, this wonder, but also this bewilderment, like, wait a minute. What just happened there? Where did that hundreds of gallons of liters of wine come from? And you realize it came from him, but you have we're reading it from 2,000 years of history and context, but they're living it in the moment. And then he starts in on healing the sick and raising the dead and the blind and so forth, and casting out demons. And you see this incredible power. It must have been a mix of both bewilderment and wonder. But it won people's hearts.
But isn't that interesting too? And we are getting ahead, but I don't mind, because it's not like we can over talk about the Gospel of John.
Yeah,
it's spirit, so there's plenty of depth there. But it convinced people, and like Pharaoh, it could harden people too.
Yeah,
and that because ultimately it was the miracles that made the religious orders say, we're going to have to kill this guy.
Yeah, because we're so dug into our position that I'm not going to budge. That's a frightening thing.
Oh, and we will talk about this 2 weeks from now after our guest speaker, is when he was baptized, they heard something and they saw something, a spirit, a dove, a voice. It appears to me, as I read through all those gospel accounts, that this wasn't just something that only John and Jesus saw, that it seemed to be a public thing that happened, that a voice spoke and a dove landed. Yeah. And yet, to some people, they're like, well, okay, I'm following that guy. And others, they went away and seemed to be unchanged. So it proves a lie to some of the materialists that just say, if you just showed me something, like if you showed me something, real, then sure, I would follow it. But then if you really ask people, I've talked to a fair amount of my atheist friends, well, what would it take to prove to you? And their real answer is nothing can prove it to me,
Right.
because I'm going to believe that
Yeah.
there's a natural
Yeah.
reason behind that.
Yeah.
Something happened that naturally that, I'm just always going to have a natural reason why that thing happened. Well, then just admit that you don't want it to be true then. Because
Yeah.
if the evidence won't change your mind, then you just don't want it to be true. And that's okay. Be an honest atheist.
And that's where I think, like you said, an honest atheist, you come to this fork in the road where it's no longer a rational reason or a rational argument. It's a moral thing. Because if I do agree that that's real, that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, that he was more than just a man, then that automatically confronts me with the question of, will I bow the knee to his lordship? See, and I think that's the block, or that's the stumbling block. It's a moral question. Paul said to the church in Corinth, "Hey, to the Jews, he's a stumbling block because they look for wisdom and power, and the Gentiles, and it offends the natural man. So even if God would answer my questions rationally, there's still that moral question of, will I bow the knee to his lordship, even not having all the answers.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think that's where the honesty comes in.
Yeah.
But the same, I don't know who said it, the same sun that melts the wax hardens the clay. Yeah. And if your will is set against God, if your will is dug in, you're in a difficult spot.
And I say, too, speaking to myself, rather than just pick on the unbeliever or the atheist that isn't in the room, speak to us believers who say there is a God, that he is good, and still walk in disobedience to some of his stuff because we don't want to. That I've declared him my Savior, and I've given lip service to his lordship. And I've said that he is all good. He's all the omnis, he's all powerful, he's all knowing, he's omnipresent. But I also say he is all good. And yet will still sometimes argue with or try to dodge the Holy Spirit as it tries to move me a particular direction because I don't really want to do that, or that would be embarrassing, or just to speak to us, like because I think that's our community. And I don't mind giving apologetics points, and here's what, but I'll also admit something to you and to you guys, is that I honestly struggle with apologetics. I went through a season where I just couldn't get enough apologetics. I just loved apologetics. And this is not to say that people who do apologetics aren't great or needed. We absolutely need them in the body of Christ. I'm not saying that. But I found that it fed my ego and my pride in a way that was unfortunate and didn't actually lead people to Jesus. Yeah. And that for me, Jesus kind of pushed me into hey, people don't care if you have the right answers if they don't think you love them, and they're not going to realize that I love them if you can't love them. And so I sort of had to move to, I need to stop trying to prove people wrong. Yeah. I mean, there's a way to do apologetics where you're convincing, and that should be good. That should be beautiful and appealing, right? But I found a lot of people that do apologetics don't always act appealing.
Yeah, it's more of a law debate.
Yeah. And I apologize to our apologists out there. I love you, and I love you that run apologetic schools. Tim, you're the best, and you're smarter than me. You're not stronger than me, but you're smarter than me. But I'm going to say that I want those things to exist, but I have to be really careful in the way that I do them, and so that I'm not proud.
You know, the prime example of apologetics in the New Testament is Acts 17, where Paul stood on Mars Hill and he spoke to those people that day, and he said, "Listen, I see, you're spiritual." I'm paraphrasing, but I see.
It was great apologetics,
and I think the beauty of that is that Paul wasn't just there telling them why they were wrong or how to get right. I think he was listening. He listened and he looked, and I think apologetics from the motive of just trying to prove I'm right or you're wrong is pretty narrow.
Yeah, he started with what they believed.
Yeah, and I think. I think for the bigger picture here, I think loving your neighbor, in our context of everything we've talked about here today, loving our neighbors, I think looks like, I want to hear you. I want to listen to you. Yeah. What do you believe? And what are you afraid of, or what are you confident in? And I think that's the starting point, is that Christians as believers, we are good listeners. I think Jesus did that. The interaction with the woman at the well, he was leading her in a direction that led to life, but he listened to her. He interacted. And I think that's kind of been lost a little bit, our current culture, because now we just scream at each other. We don't listen at each other, to each other.
And two, I don't think there's any greater apologetic than the one that he used in that instance, which was a miracle. He had a word of knowledge for her. Oh, that guy you're with now isn't your husband, and you've had X number of husbands. And there was a prophetic element. They're like, well, you just bypassed, because she was doing intellectual arguments. Right. Well, you guys say we should do this, and we say we should do this. And he just skipped it and said, well, here's something that only God can know, and I'm going to say that to you. And that kind of bypasses the intellectual argument and go, well, now I can't really argue with you.
Yeah, don't you wish on that particular story you could have just put a pause and just stopped and had a conversation with that woman in that moment, an intimate conversation about, tell us the truth. How do you feel? What are your relationship? What is your relationship life? Are you content with multiple husbands, especially in that culture? And I can't believe the answer would be, oh yeah, I'm fine. It had to have been, yeah, I'm hurting. That's why she was, hey, give me this water so that I don't have to thirst anymore. But I just like that idea of the church listening. I think I've mentioned this before, but John Stott, he said we have to listen out of both, as pastors and leaders, out of both with 2 ears. God gave us 2 ears for a reason. We listen to the word of God, but we also listen to the cry of a culture, to the pain of a culture. And then we bring those two things to bear. And I just think that's what makes for hopefully authentic and effective pastoring.
Yeah. Well, we better wrap up. What could we title this? Optimistic Nihilism, Mangoes, and John.
And John
Like
brings
that.
It all home.
Yeah, John brings it all home. Yeah, guys, if we can, we'd love to be of service to you as pastors or friends. I hope we see you on Sunday. We're bad at promoting. We're not good podcasters in that way. I keep forgetting to tell people that a podcast exists, or that you can send in questions, or da-da-da. So if you are a regular listener to this and you have questions from the Gospel of John, particularly where we're at, but we'll take anything, but we're looking for questions around the sermon that we're in. Send those in to us. We'll put that on the screen so you got the number to go to. And maybe let other people know. Let other people know this exists. Yeah,
we'd love to.
Not because we're not trying to monetize this or do anything. We're trying to bless people, so we want it to be a blessing. So
yeah. If there's anything we can help with, pray for.
Yeah,
just reach out to us through our website or get a hold of our tech genius, Ethan. He's happy to take all your calls.
Absolutely. All right, love you guys. Bye.
See you.